Court ruling, Citizens United, where they give corporations give unlimited, undisclosed campaign contributions for political causes, political candidates, and Supreme Court ruled for Citizens United, and it more or less said that a corporation is considered an individual. And I'm just really concerned that the special interest groups and lobbyists are running Washington when we were left dividing people. And in fact, it was really a bad ruling. I'm really upset about it. It's going to turn this next campaign into a real show. The bottom line of the Citizens United case says that more or less proves that a corporation is an individual. Do you consider a corporation an individual?
That's a good question. I mean, again, it was a Supreme Court decision. I think, statement a little bit wrong, they still, my understanding is there's still full disclosure of who's giving the money.
No.
I think it might not be who's part of that individual, but I think the company still has to disclose. But we'll take a look at it. I don't know if there's legislation that's coming up for it. Again, the Supreme Court does what it wants to do. We've seen that over and over again, that we don't have any say over that. So we'll see if there's legislation that comes up. But I think that what I have supported is full disclosure. My own personal campaign, more than 80% of my support comes from in-district, from local residents, from people who live, who can vote for me. And I think that's the right way to go. We still are, all of our focus is on working for the people that we represent, knowing that they're the ones that we vote for.
More people by people. Campaign finance.
My name is Fred Dixon. I don't work for the post office. I have to disclose that I practiced law 47 years. Most of that time I've been a tax accountant. I have all the background, the training, Michelle Buckingham, former chairman of the state federal tax section, editor of the Federal Tax Newsletter, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. With that in mind, I ask you specifically, please be as specific as you can, what changes, if any, would you make to the tax code?
Now, well, I'd love to get your suggestions, your advice. I mean, we've got to make it more comprehensible. If it really isn't, I've talked to other tax attorneys who say, boy, there's stuff I don't get in the tax code. There's stuff that just doesn't make sense, contradiction, rulings, different things that happen that I just don't understand. We've got to make it understandable to people. We've got to make it, I think, flatter, fairer, broader, and simpler. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much money is spent by people trying to avoid taxes. And I just don't see that as productive work.
But specifically, what would you change?
Well, I think that's exactly what I'm saying, is make it a flatter, fairer tax. So you have less.
So you would reduce the
I don't even know if I don't know.
How would make it flatter? I mean, yeah, bring it top down.
Let's talk. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts. How many years? 46 years?
47.
Yeah, well, I'd love to get your thoughts of how can we make it so it works. So my sense is right now is it really punishes productivity. It discourages productivity. We need to have something that encourages productivity.
And
1 minute.
Without being sorry, my sense is that most of the people who are in Congress don't know any more about the tax code than apologize about finance.
One thing I would like to see is that every member of Congress has to fill out their own taxes. I think that you get tax reform if every member of Congress has to fill out their taxes.
My name's Dave Wick. I live in Batavia. Hi. And my frustration, as I'm sure everybody or most people have, is with the recent debacle about the debt ceiling. I have yet to hear what I would consider a cogent argument for why it makes sense for people in your party, specifically people in the House, why they can't say it's okay to balance the budget on the backs of the poor people who have the middle class or the least going for them, and not raise taxes on the millionaires and close the loophole. That seems so radically unfair and so un-American, because I think our country was founded to fight a monarchy and those having wealth being in the power, and it is the government of the people by the people. I've heard the argument that, well, we need to support the tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, to increase to get the economy going and so forth. And yet, look what's happened in the last 10 years since we've had the Bush tax. To a huge deficit. So, to me, it doesn't make sense. So, if you could address that.
Absolutely. I think, first, a lot of things there. There was honest discussion on the debt ceiling vote. I really believe, and there's been differences. Even President Obama, when he was in the Senate, voted against the debt ceiling increase when he was there. So people have had differences of opinion of raising our debt ceiling. I just made the commitment that if we're going to do it, we have to have real cuts, real caps, and a structural change to how we budget in the future. So that was my commitment. Let me just say quickly on the Bush tax cuts, because that was something that's been brought up before. I wasn't there when those were voted on, but if you look at the numbers, the first couple years of 2000, revenues decreased by about 12%. After those were passed between 2003, when they were fully implemented, between 2003 and 2007, there was a 44% increase in revenue to the federal government. Unemployment went from 6.2% down to 4.2% from 2003 to 2007. That's unbelievable. 4.2%, and now we've been at 30 months above 8% unemployment. What we're doing now isn't working. And
We have the same exact tax cuts, though, that we had under Bush. So I don't understand what you're trying to say.
at that time, the taxes, revenue, compared to gross domestic product, it was about 50%, went up to about 60% under George Bush. In the last 2.5 years, it's gone to 97% of gross domestic product of what our taxes are. And so what we have to do, I'm absolutely convinced that the way that we get our way out of this, I know about time, is grow, and get jobs growing again. If we can do that, get more people working again, good things are going to happen. My time's up.
Yeah.
Somebody else can ask the camera out of time. My 60 seconds. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rick Teller. Good to see you. Good to have a town hall meeting. I can remember, the only one I've been to is Representative Foster at the Campus Library, and we had a small desk, and I would sit in line for 45 minutes watching him question my question, asking why can't we hear the question? No, you only meet privately with you. So it is encouraging to have a representative who has boldness to be able to take that question.
Amen.
I started 8 years ago in my garage in Lisbon. I was a school teacher in Lisbon, making 20 grand with no benefits to 5 kids. I started this in my garage. I'm now moving to Yorkville, bringing my 100 employees with me. I've done it with the government all over. If you want to create jobs, look, you guys are all going to vote for your buddy Obama. Listen. GE made $16 billion. $16 billion. Didn't pay just zero. They got a check for $2.5 billion. He is now, Jeffrey Immel, is the job stuff. So when you yell at people like me, who bust my butt and pay 45% of the revenue in taxes, why don't you wake up and see it? When Warren Buffett, he should be called out. Warren Buffett is an investor, he buys businesses, cuts out the employees, sells them for a profit, and gets taxed at 15%. He's not an entrepreneur like me. I started a bakery in Yorkville. You're the man!
Raises the ordinary income.
I'm an S Corp. Unlike people who don't know, S Corps flow through to the individual. So I pay individual tax, and now I pay 42% because of the state. I paid $220,000 for my Social Security for my employees last year. And you have John Kerry standing in front of the camera saying, I'm the bad guy. John Kerry is the richest man in the whole Congress. And here's